All right. Much needed second segment sip there. As always, in a setup here that may be unfamiliar to those everydayers out there on YouTube, or maybe mildly familiar if you have a really good memory. Can you guess where I am? Let me know. Okay, let's get into the mailbag here. YouTube comments or X, formerly known as Twitter at @SMcLaughlinCFB or @LockedOnDucks. Those are the handles. Mailbag is always open. If you want priority access and all sorts of other perks, go join the flock over at Subtext. That link in the description below wherever you listen to or watch this show. Free 14-day trial, then it's just $5 a month. Absolutely not a requirement though. But this be one of the perks. You send in a question, gets answered quicker than normal. This came in from one of you over there. Love the show. I am a daily listener. You do great work. Well, thank you, good sir. I appreciate that. So I was looking at the 24/7 composite. First of all, that's a great way to start a question. The deep dive work from fans asking questions. I had a question on the show recently about what makes a great question. Doing your homework. That's something I should have had in there. I was looking at the 24/7 composite, and the 2024 Oregon team is expected to have 56 4- and 5-star blue chip players on their roster for the coming season, compared to 47 for Michigan in 2023, 68 for Georgia in 2022, 66 for Georgia in 2021, respectively. I know the transfer portal now, this is not a complete picture of how the Oregon roster stacks up to other teams, but if you had to compare this 2024 Oregon Ducks team to, say, last year's Michigan team or the previous two Georgia teams, how do you think these teams would compare and stack up against each other, which on paper are the better teams? So, a great way, I think, to look at how good a team is, was, or can be is how much NFL talent do you have on your roster. And the reason on the other side of the break, I talked about Oregon being at a certain level, depending on Dan Lanning as his staff, is recruiting blue chip talent historically is step one towards building a national championship caliber roster, having that sort of team and that season. Those guys, as well as non-blue chip players like 3-star recruits or guys that flew way under the radar, maybe developing them into high quality players is also what you see with these national championship programs. Kirby Smart, Jim Harbaugh and his staff, Nick Saban for many years, they recruited high level talent and then they developed high-level talent. And when you have those two things working in tandem, you get NFL caliber guys and you just have better football players than the teams that are lining up across from you. So the 2023 Michigan team that just won the national championship had 13 players drafted. That is a lot. That is a lot. That's a lot of players. Georgia, from its 2022 team that won the national championship the year prior, had 10. The 2021 Georgia team set a record with 15. That's a big, big number. And for reference, Oregon just set a record for its program this past year with 8 players drafted, 5 of which were in the 4th round. I'm pretty sure it was 5. It was at least 4, but I think it was 5. So when I think about how does Oregon compare to those teams, I say, how many NFL draft picks do you have? And not everyone is drafted in the 1st, 2nd, or 3rd rounds. You know, those Georgia and Michigan teams had guys go later in the draft too. But when I look at this Oregon roster, I think absolute locks to get drafted at some point, maybe not in the 1st or 2nd round, but at some point. I think you have Jordan James. I think Jordan Birch, and that's if Jordan James comes out after this year. This is his junior season upcoming. Jordan Birch, I think, is an NFL guy. Johnny Cornelius and Josh Connerly, that's 4. I think Jeff Bossa gets drafted eventually, maybe later in the draft, but I don't think he becomes an undrafted free agent. Jabbar Muhammad would be 6. Evan Stewart, 7. Terrence Ferguson, 8. And then Tez Johnson and Dylan Gabriel, I think, are really high-end college players that might not have all the physical traits to make it in the NFL. Could they be undrafted free agents? Perhaps, but would they get drafted in the first 7 rounds? Not sure. I think Tez would have a slightly better chance than Dylan Gabriel, but it's also the quarterback era. So maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not. So that number is 8 right now of guys who I feel really, really solid about getting drafted next year. Go back to the metric that I just gave you. 13 from this last year's Michigan team, 10 from the previous Georgia team, 15. So on paper, with just that particular metric, I think you would say Oregon is at a slight talent deficit. But you look at where Oregon is now compared to when Dan Lanning first took over, the number of NFL caliber players has grown substantially. I mean, the 2022 team had, obviously Dorlus has gone on to be an NFL draft pick with the Falcons. They had Gonzo on that team and a couple other guys that ended up getting drafted. But the 2023 team, significantly more talented. But what I'm excited to see with Dan Lanning, the way they recruit high school kids in the portal and the way they've shown they can develop talented high school prospects and more underrated guys as well, is how high can that number get to? And that's where you have to be, because the last 3 years would tell you got to have at least 10 guys that are capable of getting drafted. You have to have 10 players who you look at and who pop off the TV and you go, that's an NFL player right there. That guy, somebody's going to want him. And it's also not just one position group, right? Michigan this past year had a quarterback drafted, running back drafted, receiver drafted, lineman drafted, defensive backs drafted. It's all over the place. So I don't think Oregon is quite at those levels right now. This season could start, though. We may feel differently. And heck, I could be undervaluing the NFL draft profile of a Marcus Harper or a Trayshawn Holden or a Kobe Savage, for instance, or Brandon Johnson or one of the corners that's on the depth chart as well. That could absolutely be the case. So that's kind of how I look at it, is where does Oregon stand on that front? I think they're still behind where those teams were at. Doesn't mean Oregon isn't good enough to win a national championship this year. That's how good those teams were. That's how good those teams had to be. This is a completely different season. You've got teams that might not be as good as the high-end teams that were on the field a year ago. I don't know. I mean, I think Georgia is going to be exceptionally good this year. But, if you look at this year's Oregon team and compare it to the last 3 national champions, do I think there is a massive gap? No. Are they on the same level? I also don't think they would quite be there. But would they be competitive? Would they be better than 49-3? Yes. Yes, I think they absolutely would. Would they win? I don't know. Because there's still an element, and this will be kind of interesting to follow as you go into the Big Ten. There is still an element of West Coast football and Big Ten SEC football. A little bit. Not a ton, but for example, a couple of years ago, Utah beats USC in the Pac-12 title game. They go to the Rose Bowl. I know Cam Rising got hurt. I watched that game against Penn State. They were not going to win that football game. And anti-West Coast bias is a thing. SEC bias is a thing. There's also some foundation with it. And the challenge for Dan Lanning going into the Big Ten is establish yourself as a team that isn't, a West Coast school that isn't as physical or isn't as big or isn't, can't do X, Y, and Z, but showcase that they can. And the way that they're recruiting, that this staff go out and challenge for high-level prospects and bring them in and retain them and add guys via the portal, they're trying to build that caliber of team because that's what Lanning knows. That's what he's seen. That's what he grew up in as a coach and what he learned as how you build a national championship program. So I have faith that Lanning can get it there because he knows exactly what it looks like and saw it under Kirby Smart at Georgia and was the DC for that national championship team in 2021, sorry. But is Oregon there right now? Feels like they could be a couple pieces away from where those teams were at. But we'll have to wait and see. That's a really good question. That's a really, really good question, and I very, very much respect the deep dive. We're going to go outside Oregon, just like a scotch, because Oregon's going to be a preseason top 10 at the very least, if not 5. But who else is going to push for playoff spots this year? That's coming up next. This episode is brought to you by our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.